morning, you guys. I hope y'all had a great weekend. We're back again with Miss Bragg teaching you math at home. It feels really weird. I wish y'all were in these seats because I don't like teaching to an empty classroom. It just looks funny. So if someone walks in, I would look. Whew. Anyways, so today we're gonna be multiplying integers. Hopefully you have your handout in front of you so you're able to follow along easily. And your standards today is gonna be still that 7th grade number system standard, except we're moving down to the second part of it, which would be being able to multiply and divide all rational numbers. Today we're just working with multiplication, and by the end of this, you will be able to multiply fractions. I know fractions are scary, but remember, Miss Bragg doesn't like them, but we're gonna get through them. All right, so let's just go ahead and jump on in. So something that you know from prior knowledge is that anytime you multiply, and it's multiplying a positive and a negative number, you end up getting a negative number. Okay, and that's gonna happen every single time, okay? So that's nothing new. All right, so last year in math, you used some properties. You learned them. We have not used them this year, so you probably have not seen them since this time last year. So there are different properties. So this property of multiplication allows me to multiply in any order. So therefore, it does not matter how you do it, and that is the commutative property. Hopefully, hearing that, it kind of brings it back. So remember, there was a commutative property of multiplication, so you can multiply in any order. And there's also a commutative property of addition. So addition and multiplication, it doesn't matter the order you do it in because you'll always get that same answer. Okay? All right, so therefore, you also know that a negative number times a positive number will always give you that negative number. So remember, order does not matter with multiplication. Okay? And if the signs in a multiplication problem are different, the solution will always be negative. Okay? So that's really important to remember. So if the signs are different, it's always going to be negative. There's no exception. That's never going to change, okay? That's just something we know from math. All right, you also know that a positive times a positive will always be positive, right? And for example, for this one, you know what 2 times 2 is. 2 times 2 is 4. Well, both those 2's for 2 times 2, it's guaranteed it's positive. It's just something you know. So that would give you 4. Okay? So that shows you any positive times a positive will always be a positive. Alright, so now let's follow this pattern, okay? So we know that when you multiply a positive times a negative, we're going to get a negative. And then we said because of the commutative property, order didn't matter. So if you do a negative times a positive, you're going to get a negative. And we said that a positive times a positive would always be positive. So therefore, when you multiply negative by negative, it's always going to be positive. Okay? So that's like a little pattern you can see. We see how these sides are different and these are different. Therefore, it's negative. But when they're the same, we get positive. Okay? So now you know that a negative times a negative will always be positive. Will always be a positive number. And if the sign in a multiplication problem are the same, the solution is positive. So hopefully that might be some review. If not, that's okay. So just remember when integers are the same, so if it's 2 positives and you multiply them, you're going to get positive. Same thing, if it's 2 negatives, you're going to get positive because same signs give you positive, different signs give you negative, okay? So that's something we're going to keep repeating, so hopefully you remember it so it's not too overwhelming at once. All right, so let's move on and let's just try an example, okay? So for example number 1, we're given 7 times negative 8. Well, let's break this up real quick. So 7 is our positive number, okay? So we have a positive. And when a number and number are side by side with parentheses, that means to multiply. In case you forget that, we're going to bring that back in, okay? And then negative 8, that's a negative. Well, when we said that you multiply and signs are different, you're always going to get a negative, right? So therefore, this answer has to be a negative something. And you should know what 7 times 8 is because that's a fact that you've done before. So 7 times 8 gives us 56. So our answer is negative 56. Okay? So hopefully that's not too challenging. Below your note-taking guide, you should have little boxes this goes in example number 1 box, okay? Let's move on. And this is supposed to be example number 2, but for some reason Ms. Bragg could not type right. So example number 2, we have a negative 9 times a negative 3. All right, so we have 2 negatives. And when we said we multiply the same signs, you're always going to get a positive. So we should get a positive number. So we'll just do 9 times 3. So you can do your fingers for that 9 trick. Or if you know that 9 times 3 is 27, you know your answer is a positive 27. Because we said 2 negatives would give us that positive. And you do not have to put a plus 27. You can if you want. But remember, we don't normally write that positive when we talk about it. All right, so now this is example number 3. This is really backwards. I'm sorry. This Bragg is messing up today. So let's look at this one. We have negative 6 times negative 7. So hopefully you can work this one out while I do it up here. So we're given 2 negatives. And we know when we multiply the same type of signs together, we always get a positive. So now we just need to do 6 times 7. Hopefully that's something you know. And 6 times 7 does give us 42. And it is positive, but we do not have to put that sign, remember, because we just assume it's positive. All right, and so you have a box for this one. So let's look at this and let's kind of talk about it. So which of the following statements is not true? So there's one up here that's not true. So a negative multiplied by a negative is a positive product. So A would look like a negative times a negative equals a positive. A positive multiplied by a negative is a negative product. So this one would be a positive times a negative gives us a negative. A negative multiplied by a negative is a negative product. So this is saying negative times negative equals a negative. And a negative multiplied by a positive is a negative property. So a negative multiplied by a positive is negative. So look at those. There's only one that cannot be true. You can kind of look above where we did that following the pattern. It will kind of help you. Or if you remember from the examples we just did, it has to be C. C can't be true because it's saying the same sign multiplied by the same sign is a negative. But we just learned that the same sign times the same sign is always positive. So C cannot be true. Okay? Hopefully we're not going too fast. Remember, you are watching this on YouTube, so you can pause it, you can rewind it, you can skip ahead if you feel comfortable. Remember, this is helping you, so you kind of get to monitor how you learn and how much you learn at once. So let's move on to example number 5, our last one. And we love it because it's a word problem. We love word problems. Just kidding, we hate them. So Hannah is planting a large field with alfalfa. So Hannah's a farmer. She needs some hay for her horses, and she wants to plant alfalfa. So each acre requires 12 pounds. So for every acre, she gets this 12 pounds of alfalfa. Okay? We want to know how many pounds, and this is supposed to be pounds, not ponds. There goes Ms. Bragg typing again. How many pounds of alfalfa will Hannah use if she plants 23 acres? Okay? So a lot of information at once, but let's take away the key parts. So we know that 1 acre gives us 12 pounds, right? So we know 1 acre gives us 12 pounds. We want to know how many pounds, so how many pounds 23 acres will give us. Now before I move on, look at this kind of, we're going to throw back in some prior knowledge. Maybe, I don't know if you do, but you might remember ratios from 6th grade. So this is a ratio, okay? So if you remember that, you might be able to set it up proportionally and solve it that way. Or we can do it the way I'm going to do it on here. So it just depends what you feel comfortable doing right now on your own. So if we know 1 pound gives us 12, 1 acre gives us 12 pounds, then we want to know 23 acres. So we're going to do 23 times 12. Okay? So we'll work that out. I'm going to do this in orange up here. So remember when we multiply, we stack numbers on top of each other. So 23 times 12. And then we'll multiply. So 2 times 3, 6. 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 2 is 2. Sorry, it's running in. And then we add. So you multiply and then you add. So we bring down that 6. 3 plus 4 is 7. And then 2. So 23 acres would give us 276 pounds. And then we have to decide if that would be positive or negative. Well, we had 2 positive numbers, so our answer is just 276 pounds. All right, and I believe that is all for your multiplying integer notes. Tomorrow you will be doing dividing integer notes, so there will be a video already on YouTube for that. You can go ahead and watch it now, or you can just take a break and then watch me teach tomorrow. So it just depends what you want to do. Remember, if you have any questions, call me, email me, remind me. I'm available and I'm ready to help. Good luck.